Like Mel Tucker, 10 years and $95 million at Michigan State. Does that cause you trouble sleeping at night?
I'm trying to think back to the NBA course that taught that, and I don't remember it.
Yeah.
I don't remember those numbers.
You didn't take the sports-specific
I guess
track?
not. How you make that work. Man, good for him. That's a big number. It's a really big number, and a lot of stories out there about kind of how that came to fruition, and I think there were a couple of billionaires involved and all kinds of stuff. But these numbers are getting big. They're getting really big in our world.
I won't bore you with the backstory of the billionaires involved, but there is a bit of an ego contest, I think, between a couple of guys that do mortgages for livings. We talked some about that on the radio yesterday. I'm not trying to peg you down on numbers, but when you look at the landscape, it feels like there's a little bit of a market reset that's happening with some of the rumors that are out there about LSU and what they're willing to pay. And, you've been open about the fact that you're going to have to pay Lane Kiffin more money, and you're going to do everything you can to keep him as the head coach at Ole Miss. And just kind of everywhere you look, it just keeps getting bigger.
It does. You look at really even going into this year, you kind of had different levels of coaches. You had Nick and Dabo and, Ed, some of those guys that were up there $8-9 million. Then you had a $7 million, 4 or 5 that were kind of $7 million, and then really it was $5 million and below. And now I think you're going to look up after this cycle, and you're going to have, you're going to have somebody making over 10, and several guys making 8 and 9, and then the 7s are going to be blown out of the water this year, I think. So it is. It's certainly changing, and I'm not sure that it ever goes back the other direction.
I feel like when I have asked a coach in the past, hey, give me your recruiting pitch. Like, you're really trying to get a kid. Nobody ever actually does that. So I'm going to try this with you in a different way. Tell me how you negotiate a big contract. And, I mean, we can pretend that we're taking Lane Kiffin out of it, but what is that actually like to say, well, we're willing to pay $5 million, and somebody on the other side says, well, no, we need $7 million. Is that how it works? I mean, is it really volleying numbers back and forth? You say, well, I'll throw in a country club membership. Well, we got to have how does that work?
Well, the country club membership doesn't get you very far in those negotiations.
That's just kind of assumed.
We try all that stuff. No, it is a little bit of that. I think it's, you start working with their representation, and each side is kind of bringing their, their points of emphasis to the negotiation. And, you look at what the coaches accomplish. You look at the market. I mean, the market obviously is wild, but that's a huge part of it. You have to factor in a little bit of what the coaches accomplished long term versus how hot they are at the moment, who's coming after them, all those type of things. So there's a lot of variables there, but it's an interesting process. I've actually enjoyed it. It's kind of a fun puzzle to solve, and I feel like throughout my time at Ole Miss, whether it's been before I became the AD and working a little bit in this world or the past couple years, I felt like the best part of a negotiation when both sides feel good, and I feel like that some of the things we've done with our coaches, both sides have felt like they got what they needed, and I felt good about that. So we'll see where it goes from here.
You bought a house before. You go into a house buying process and you go, okay, this is my number. This is what I could afford to pay. And then if you're not quite going to get there, you and your wife go back and you talk, can we do a little bit more? Is there like a draw a line in the sand number where you're like, I'd love to pay you another $150,000 for this house. I just don't have it.
Right.
Is every school out there in that scenario to some degree?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that
maybe some more than others.
Yeah, but then this happens at Michigan State, where I would have said they were probably one of those schools that had a line in the sand at some point. I mean, they've had a great football history, but they haven't won national championships and those type of things. But then all of a sudden, when somebody steps up and does what these guys do, then all of a sudden you blow it out of the water. But yeah, I mean, I think that there's a number as the AD in your head as you're thinking about the budget, you're thinking about how it all works. You're like, this is probably our top end, to get here. But at the same time, you look at kind of the current situation, and maybe if you invest a little more now, it comes back to you later. So there's some wiggle room there, and you try to balance that out.
And can that become like an untenable situation for a fan base where they say, no fan base ever wants to hear we lost this guy because of money. But is there a place where you just have to tell them? I guess we're only at like 30 seconds.
I say hold that.
We'll come back to it. Where you have to tell them, like, look, This is why we need you to donate, because this is where we are.
Yeah, I've got a good answer for this one when we come back.
All right, we will
That's a good
do that
tease.
when we come back. Sports Talk Mississippi with you. If Keith Carter was joining us on the phone, it would be on the Farm Bureau phone line. Check out favrates.com and go with the home team at Mississippi Farm Bureau. We're broadcasting from the grand opening of Life Dental Oxford on South Lamar. Be right back. Hey, what was your question before the break?
So my question was, we were talking about, negotiations and budgets and things like that. And like you said, there's a point. There's a point where you just have to say, I can't. How do you explain that to a fan base?
Yeah, and where I was going to come back with that is it puts ADs in a precarious situation, because you look at at that moment your coach is hot. The fan base wants you to do whatever you possibly can to keep that coach. So you go spend the money. Well, then 2 years later, 3 years later, you have a bad season, and the fan base is like, I can't believe the AD paid him that money,
right.
And so it works the other way too. It's like, you get to the point, and I'll be honest, we haven't ever had to do that. We've never had to get to the stopping point and say, well, we just can't do that, and the coach has left. But, it puts you in a really tough spot, because you want to do the best thing you can, and you're trying to balance, do we invest this money and like Richard was saying before, go above what we probably should, hoping for the return on investment, or do you say, you know what, this is what we can do, and we'll go find the next up-and-comer?
So you were saying a second ago that, Michigan State surprised you a little bit that they went with that number. Does that change the market?
Yeah, it probably does. I mean, I think you're going to look at still probably, top 10, top 15. As I look at the market, I look at, can we get a coach to number 8? Can we get him to number 11? Where are we? Right now with Coach Kiff, I think we're around 19th, 20th in the country. But, yeah, I think at some point –
In base salary, right?
In base salary, that's right. And so I think if you look at Mel Tucker, I think he was somewhere in the 14, 15 range, and now he's going to move up to maybe number 1 or 2, wherever that lands.
Yeah.
So the way I look at it, too, is the market is one thing, but at the same time, if there are no jobs above – if you're paying a coach $7 million and there's only 8 jobs above that, and maybe the top is at 10, well, there's still not – you can't go to that job because it's filled. So I'm not sure that it totally changes the market from a standpoint of you got to have 20 guys making $10 million a year. But at the same time, these agents, they're going to say, well, hey, he's up here. Here's what he's accomplished. Your coach is right there with him. They need to be making a similar amount. But at some point, to y'all's point, you say, okay, well, that's great. Here's what we have to offer. You can stay here and make 5, 6, 7, or you can go try the market and see what else is out there. But there's not a lot of jobs right now paying $9 or $10 million. So,
do you think there are any schools out there that cannot afford what they're about to pay?
Probably.
Is that too specific in the way that I asked that?
No, you're good. You're good.
No, that's probably true. I mean, I think people, you may see some that pay and then they figure it out a little bit. But, I just think that's, if you've got lightning in a bottle and you've got the coach that you think is the right guy, you want him to stay there. You want stability. And you try to figure that out.
You've talked a lot about facilities lately and the announcement that's coming up around the bowl game, and they're going to start the construction on the Manning Center immediately after the season, or 1st of February, whatever the day is. So Lane Kiffin says earlier this week, after a lot of praise for the crowd on Saturday night, maybe it was trying to encourage fans to be a little bit louder. I don't know that crowd can get any louder than it was. At some point, is it simply a function of architecture?
Yeah, I mean, clearly 100,000 people are going to be louder than 64,000 people. So I do think that as we look at the west side, we are talking to our master planning company, and we have not hired an architect on that yet, but we do want to build it more vertical. We want to try to keep sound in. I think some of the stuff Coach Kiffin was talking about is just we got, I guess – we get loud in certain segments of the game, but he wants it loud all the game, and that type of thing. But, yes, I think generally it's like, we're going to have to be creative with the architecture there on the west side, around to the north, and then ultimately when we do the east side, trying to hold that sound in as much as we possibly can.
What's an Egg Bowl day like for you?
That's a great question. So when we play in Starkville, I usually just drive down with the family. Sometimes we'll go to Tupelo and get in the caravan from the hotel and go down. Sometimes those mornings I'll sit in my deer stand for a little while before.
You're probably not alone in that.
Yeah, there's a few.
Do you think is that a calm before the storm?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Now, if it's a home game, you're on. You're worrying about all kinds of stuff, but. The road games for the AD are actually pretty fun because you just show up. Most of the time. You may have some donors that are sitting in the box, or you got to see some people and do those type of things. But the road games, you have far less stress than you do for the home. But next Thursday, it's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, I think it's going to be a great environment. Two really, really good teams, and not overlooking our opponent for this weekend clearly, but excited about next Thursday.
I talked to an MSU assistant
That's a good caveat.
I talked to an MSU assistant coach, and I was like, you can't do this, but I'm going to go ahead and look ahead. And he was like, I understand.
You may be weary of the coach conversation and the whole contract conversation. It's kind of what you sign up for, though, when you hire Lane Kiffin, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I've talked about that publicly in the past few weeks. I mean, we knew when we hired Lane that we knew he was going to win games. We knew that he's got this national, persona. He's an offensive guy that scores a lot of points. Fun to watch his teams play. So we knew this was going to happen. We knew that every year when the rumor mill started that he was going to be right in the middle of them, and that's what we were prepared for. So. Like I said before, we're going to do everything we can to keep Coach here. We want him to be here, and I think he does too.
And I'm not trying to beat a dead horse with this, but I am kind of curious, like, what goes on inside your head. Is it simply, I'm going to do everything I can to keep my guy, and if it doesn't, it doesn't? I mean, or is it this, you're like tossing and turning at night trying to figure out, is there something else I can do? Is there a way to, or do you just kind of do the best you can and –
like a trust the process kind of thing?
And, like, be content in that.
Yeah, I think that it's the first. I mean, to me, I feel like a lot of the work is done along the way. When you're showing your coach support, you're giving him the resources that he needs. When it's not contract season, when you build that relationship, you build that trust. But, yeah, I mean, ultimately we're gonna make an offer and try to find some middle ground and make sure everyone's on the same page. But at the end of the day, and I've said this, now, is there a number out there that might be a barrier? Of course there is. But generally, I don't think finances is going to be an issue for us. We're going to make sure that we give resources, we compensate at the level we need to. But ultimately, if a coach decides, and not Lane or whoever, but if a coach decides there's somewhere else they'd rather be, there's probably not an amount of money that you could spend to stop them from going there. Yeah. So that's kind of the way I look at it. And ultimately, know that Ole Miss is a very attractive program, and if we have to go another direction, then we'll do that.
Do you think we're going to start seeing some coaches, because we've had some grass is not as greener incidents, we won't bring up any names, over the past year? A coach like, and just to give an example, Billy Napier, who's stuck it out at Louisiana, and he seems to have a good thing going there. Do you feel like there's a movement towards that of coaches saying, like, I've got a good thing here, why take the risk?
Yeah, I think there is, unless there's just like I said, a personal fit that, they feel like this is a dream job type scenario, or just the money is something it's transformational, wealth or that type of thing. Right. So, but yeah, I do think that some coaches are like, you know what, I can win here. Mm-hmm. I'm supported here. The people like me here. Maybe the expectation isn't to win a national championship every single year, and there's a little bit of, rational part of the fan base there that understands
Probably
that. There's not many places like that. No. But I do think that you're seeing some of that in college sports in general.
I don't feel like we've gotten anything that we can report out of this. Is it okay if we report that you will not be offering Lane Kiffin 10 years and $95 million?
I mean,
well, you can't offer him 10 years. It's state law.
That was kind of the.
Yeah.
Jeez, come on, man.
Let's go with that. Let's go with that.
Again, I'm trying.